You unlock this benefit with the key of Patreon. Beyond is another dimension. A dimension of thought. A dimension of speculation. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both waffle and substance. Of things and ideas. You've just crossed into the podcast zone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our trek through the Twilight Zone. And just like me, just like Julian, we are all alike. Everybody's the same, and we're all just the same. That's right, we're talking about the episode People Are Alike All Over, where two people, a scientist and, an astronaut, I think, which would still be a scientist, but they don't seem to accept that in the 60s, are jettisoned to Mars. And once again, as in all these episodes on the Twilight Zone, the spaceship crashes. Launching seems fine. Landing's a real problem in the Twilight Zone. And we are introduced to Martians. So, Julian, what were your thoughts on this episode?
Well, this is a weaker episode after a long run of really strong ones. I like the misanthropy that of this episode and of some other Twilight Zone episodes. I mean, certainly there in The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. This play on the title, People Are Alike All Over. This is what the main character hears, and there's this sort of debate, sort of like Spock McCoy debate over whether people are alike all over, meaning a good thing, or these aliens could be dangerous, right? And so it seems as if, they look just like humans, right? I mean, first of all, Mars has an atmosphere. It has, looks like sort of like Greek costumes. They look like, I kept thinking is this a scene from Amazon Women on the Moon? Or is this like a staging of like pre-Crisis on Infinite Earth Superman's Krypton or something? But so, and then at the end, you find out that, they're human, but they're all too human. They're not perfect.
Yeah. No, I hated this episode.
Oh, wow.
Not hate's probably the wrong word. It really didn't work for me. The whole thing of sort of being introduced to the sort of the Martians and them looking exactly like alien, like us, human, but in, like you say, sort of Greek Roman attire, felt like such a precursor to Star Trek. Like we found an M-class planet and it's populated by Greek culture. But the problem I have with this episode is that sort of thing of firstly they're sending two people into space. This idea of small crews, just sort of, all right, fine, but it just feels so ill-equipped constantly that especially I'm getting a bit bored of the crashed spaceship trope in the Twilight Zone. But even when he comes,
not just Twilight Zone, right?
There's everything.
All sci-fi is get your rocketry right, people.
Yes, landing shouldn't be this hard. But one of the things, even when he comes out, he acknowledges he's scared, and so he doesn't want to leave the ship. All right, they hack the ship and open the door, and he goes out. He has a gun, never gets fired. It literally gets taken off him. Mm-hmm. And then he's basically sort of like, oh, well, you're just like me. He accepts it straight away, and it's all very sort of like pally and stuff. And then it's like, well, how are you speaking English? I like the fact that you're not. We are using a form of telepathy or hypnosis, and you're actually talking like us. That we're able to communicate. And it's great. Thank you for addressing that. That's a tick for doing something good, because I like the fact they did that. However, the twist that this runs up to, so they say, oh, we want to show you around, we want to introduce you to people, but we want to give you somewhere to stay. And so he stays for he says it's a couple of, he actually says it's been a few hours. And then they turn up and they've basically built a house, like a mid 20th century house. It's got drapes, it's got a sofa, it's got whiskey, it's got all this other stuff. Got everything he needs. They walk him through a front door. Mm-hmm. And then when he gets in, he starts to notice things. It hasn't got windows. Pulls down the drapes. There's no window there. And then it opens. And it's got bars on it. And all I'm thinking is, hang on, you walk past that to get in the place. it really, like, this whole ending again, like, you know, and there was a sign that he sees it. It says Earth creature, and I'm like, yeah, but he just looks like you. How is this zoo worthy? Like, it doesn't make any sense. The whole thing, the whole ending just felt so. It didn't work for me at all.
Well, I mean, I like the ending. I think the ending is a cliche, but I love the lack of windows. I mean, you're right. It doesn't make sense that they, just walked him in there. You didn't notice you were walking through a zoo,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, I mean, it's a cliche of like a human in an alien zoo, right? I mean, that doesn't mean it's not cool. I mean, I quite like the horror of like, oh, it's sort of like, oh, this is all a set, right? That sort of element I really dig. I'm more bothered by the sign, like maybe his hypnosis lets him read the sign in English, but that the sign says Earth creature in its native habitat. I mean, okay, it's the alien zoo twist ending, It is what it is. I think it's cool, but it's not an amazing episode.
Yeah, I don't know. Just some things about it just didn't work for me. I think it's so that, for example, because they do look so human, and they acknowledge that they're able to um, adjust his perceptions of things. So for me, if it was, because there's a moment when two of them sort of like, they're like, yes, when they sort of like, he goes with them, like, a sneaky little high five kind of moment. Because they all look so human, and there's a bunch of them as well around the ship. Like, I'm like, if this is a mission to trap a human creature, well, it appears you could have done it with 3 people. Like, I don't understand why there's so many people stood around the ship. Because I'll tell you right now, I went back and checked this because they obviously only have so many extras. All those people that stood around looking at the ship when they take him out are the same people that are all stood at the zoo as well. So they've only got so many extras, but that's besides the point. But like, it feels sort of just off. And even the guy who plays this scientist, like, he irritates me because I just find like he's just too willing. He says how scared he is, but then he's incredibly willing to just go with things. I'm like, hang on, where's this fear? Fear should be making you cautious. Fear should be making you a little bit paranoid. Like, you should be fighting some of this instead of just going with it. Because you're like, you should be thinking rationally about some of this stuff, or at least show something that, like, fear of being trapped in the rocket with a dead body has driven you to do something. Like, it just felt too easy throughout the whole thing. And the other thing I wanted was when they do this celebration, they're like, yes, we've caught him. A little cutback to show that they actually don't look human, and they're using some sort of like perception filter. And then if the end reveal that none of them look human, and he actually is, looks that way, so it is something interesting for them to look at, then that would have been a much more hard hitting. But
well, you mentioned, Conrad, the main character. He's played by Roddy McDowall from Planet of the Apes movies.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I also had that same sense of like, they're going to reveal, right? I mean, like the Star Trek pilot episode, The Cage,
yes,
right?
I thought of that. Yes, totally thought of that.
They don't look like humans, right? I mean, and it seems like so much of his going with it and it's just kind of surrender. I mean, I was okay with it, but it's like they look like us, and they're being like, they're clearly a highly advanced society, and they're telling him, "Oh, don't worry, we'll provide for you, we'll even repair your ship." So, right. I mean, my gripes are, number one, I thought the same thing, right? It's dumb that they look like humans. That's kind of the point of the title, and that's kind of the point that it's teasing out. But still, how awesome would that reveal be of you're in the human zoo if they're just like tentacle weird, aliens with antennae and stuff? It could be much more horrifying. The other thing that I thought is like, I'm not clear. I don't need a primer on Martian civilization, okay? But clearly they have some sort of psychic powers. They have, they can hypnotize without us seeing it. If it occurred, we're certainly aren't shown it. they can hypnotize Conrad to know the Martian language and not know that he's really speaking it, right? They can build this house overnight. They claim that they can repair his ship. So, so again, sort of why are they like, why do they wait until a human lands on Mars?
Yes.
If they have the superior technology, just go collect somebody.
Yeah, and that sort of struck me as well. I was like, hang on, like, we don't wait for sort of like a bear to turn up and go, hey, let me put that in the zoo now. But yeah, it felt bizarre. Because I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It felt too easy. And like you say, what I would say is this thing of they don't have to look human. He has to perceive them as human because of the thing, but they don't have because his astronaut partner when they're sort of talking at the very beginning of the episode, he says if they have minds and they have hearts, then they are people. And the intention being basically if they are living and they can communicate or they can reason, then they are people. And that's sort of the qualifier that's given. So they don't have to look human. You can be shown to be different looking, but still just as our society is just the same. They've got these sort of things. It would still work. But it just feels a little. I'm sorry to say this episode feels lazy. That's the only way I can describe it. There are moments of good. I do like it when he recognizes there's no windows. That's a good moment. And it does take me back to sort of like you said, ironically, you said Roddy McDowall, this idea of Planet of the Apes, and Charlton Heston being in sort of a cage, and it weirdly works better or even the cage, the Star Trek episode works better than this.
Yes.
And it works better when it is revealed that we aren't the superior thing we think we are.
Well, and there's even a love interest, right? Tinya, who's the love interest, much like in the cage, that is sort of like the Martians seem to be using her as a lure to kind of get him to, but I mean, I find myself, I agree with you about the cage in comparison. I found myself wondering like, okay, well, yeah, I know what you're saying about it seeming lazy. If the Martians can solve the language barrier by telepathy, why can't they just convince him to go into this cage, right? I mean, there's a version of this episode that addresses that stuff more clearly. I guess I just come down on, at the end of the day, I mean, these are 25-minute episodes that were, written in a week and, and shot with a very low budget. And it's yes, if you had them revealed not to be human, part of the problem with Star Trek early on was its budget and how much, it required. So, yeah, I mean, everything you're saying is correct. I just, give it a little more of a pass.
Yeah, no, you're right. There are certain things it's fine, but I think, like you say, because of the ones we've gone through recently, even in the last sort of 10, there's been some real corkers. And then you get to this, and I'm like, yeah, I know, and I know there's ups and downs. I know it can't be sustained. That's fine, but it just felt weaker in almost every respect. So, and it's one of those things like there's not. It wants to say something, that people are all the same all over, and sort of like, okay, well, you identify Martians as people, and that we are capturing things, and we like to present things. All right, what's the equivalency that you're showing on Earth?
I think the point is just that people use that phrase in a positive way, right? Like, you say, well, in Baghdad, they don't care about their kids. And you're like, no, people are like all over, right? They want food. They want to feed their kids. They want safety. But then it's perverted and it's like, oh, no, they'll take advantage of other people and they won't see the other as themselves, right? When they have power over that person. So I maybe took a little, more cynical sort of, sense out of it.
Yeah.
It's not like people are always throwing each other into zoos.
No, I got that. But it's because it shows this idea of an intent of superiority. Like the Martians think they are superior, and they haven't have an Earth creature to show in this display. I wanted an equivalency to that on Earth, and to me, straight away, not even thinking it's Roddy McDowell because it's obviously pre Planet of the Apes, but like that beginning part, like, all right, probably having a chimpanzee on set would be quite difficult, but like even a story of like we've sent chimpanzees into space of like they're just sort of dumb animals kind of thing, and then you get this equivalency of like, oh, okay, that you look down on these creatures and now you're being looked down upon. I just wanted that equivalency of to show that people are alike all over. All right, show me what we are like. Why is it that we are then to show this? That's the one thing that was missing for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they try to ground those themes in a writerly way, right? By having that conversation about the nature of the aliens they would encounter, and people are like all over. But you're right; they haven't they haven't seeded that theme. They haven't seeded the twist, which is just a Twilight Zone twist. The other thing I would say that sort of lessens these episodes as you go on is you're so used to the Twilight Zone twist that you start anticipating it, right? Yeah. So especially because we've seen rockets crash before, you don't see outside the rocket. You spend quite a bit of time, I think too much time inside the rocket. You're like, they're on, they're on Earth, right? Yeah. We've seen that twist, and it's like, oh, okay. No, in fact, the aliens look like ancient Greeks. And you're thinking, yeah, would I have preferred the twist that I anticipated, or do aliens look like ancient Greeks makes more sense? And so you finally do get the twist. And I think because there's this weird way that Twilight Zone sort of trains you to expect better and to deconstruct it and to anticipate these twists. And then when you don't get ones that are as smart as what you've concocted, or as interesting, you are disappointed.
Yeah, I do think I do think there's a better version of this episode that doesn't involve a crash. I think the equivalency you could have made, and I don't know if it would hit home a little bit, but would be like assuming that someone arriving on the Mayflower and thinking they are better than the Native Americans. They're better than indigenous people. Having that as a representation and then going, oh no, you're going to go in our zoo, like you're going to become a part of our history, would have been an interesting way. Like it didn't need a crash. You've landed and then you've engaged with this alien culture, and this alien culture's gone, no, like you are now our dinner, kind of thing. So I do think this is. I get that this was written in a week, but it could have been stronger. There's ways of addressing this, I think. Anyway. We are sort of shy on time now. So, any final thoughts on people that are alike all over?
I agree with your assessment that it is weaker. I do want to note that, like, just like Ray Bradbury, like, there's this history of like Martians clearly have psychic powers in some way. Like, it's very strange.
Well, when they actually arrive, we'll find out, I'm sure. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we shall speak to you on the next episode.